I know, I'm going to be the first one to admit that I'm really behind on the reviews, 2 months in fact, but I was in the process of moving. I bought a bigger house, which is a really cool thing, but you know, the process of moving is always an arduous process. I'm actually in a new studio slash office now. I'm in the process of building it. The acoustics are a little bit strange in this office, so it might reflect it on this video. Nevertheless, the scenery is going to change. Obviously, I'm moving into a new home, studio, etc. So bear with me through this much larger transition. And trust me, guys, I think growth is a very good thing, and I've been very fortunate that I've been able to move into a new place. You know, families growing, etc. And I thank all of you for supporting the channel while I was in this transition. But I gotta tell you, moving sucks. Nevertheless, we're gonna get back to the reviews hardcore, and I gotta tell you, while I was in the process of moving and moving all the stuff that I own, I came across some old stuff, and I've got a ton of new stuff that I want to review for you. So just again, bear with me, and once again, I appreciate all of your patience, but we're going to keep the reviews going. Now, as I mentioned the last time that I was able to basically review a Star Wars figure, what the Acolyte has taught me is a greater appreciation for the prequels, the prequel trilogy, so to speak, because I think that after watching how horrible the Acolyte was, I have a much greater appreciation for what the prequels were trying to do. I mean, not for nothing, but thank God that they canceled Season 2. Anyways, today we're going to be reviewing Hot Toys version of Mace Windu from Attack of the Clones, the 1/6 scale figure. Let's take a closer look. I think way back in the day before I started collecting hardcore, there was a sideshow version of Mace Windu that I kind of missed out on. And thank God that Hot Toys actually made their version. Now the head sculpt here is beautiful. This is definitely Samuel L. Jackson, not dropping any F-bombs or anything like that. But I love how stoic this looks. The eyes are done very well, countenance in the face is great, obviously the skin tones are perfect, and they even have that little indentation at the top and the ridge of his skull, which I think is just pretty awesome, and it just an attention to detail like usual. So this head sculpt for me is just magnificent. I think of all the Jedi attire that I've seen on screen, Mace Windu's is not only the most interesting, but in terms of color palettes, it's also very appealing to the eye. Now it's a Hot Toys figure, so top notch in terms of the materials that they use. But what I really like is the color palette. The white inner lining of the actual garb contrasted that with the kind of like opaque and off-white. And then of course they have the cloak, which is draped in this brown, which looks really cool. Overall, the appeal here is the different layers of the color palette, which is nice. Now, the lower section of this piece is a little bit weird in that there's so much cloth that it can actually obscure the trousers and the boots unless you separate it. And I was also a little bit disappointed that there is no kind of like inner mesh wire so that you can do some dynamic poses with the cloak. Nevertheless, again, it's top-notch materials, but it is a little weird. Now I want to emphasize a little bit more on the lower side of this piece, and I pulled back the drapes a little bit just so you can see how well the boots are sculpted. They look like actual boots. I mean, just everything, the lip, the sole, and that little flap that is right in between where the shin is. I think it's just done very well. Overall, the sculpt is done awesomely. Unfortunately, if you kind of surround yourself with the cloak, you don't really see it, so I guess, you know, it just comes down to preference and how you want to display it. Now, without question, and I'm sure this is true for many fans, the coolest part about Mace Windu is the color and the very unique color of his lightsaber. I mean, I don't know what kind of kyber crystals he put in there, but it's got this very purplish magenta look to it, which is really awesome. The hilt and the actual lightsaber itself is very ornate and very intricately sculpted. And then of course it's only complemented by the blade, which is that really awesome purple magenta. I don't know how to describe the color, but it's just really awesome. Now of course it has the light up feature, and it's actually pretty bright. Now to demonstrate how cool this feature is, I used varying lighting to kind of see how strong the blade was, and obviously it's kind of medium here, and it's actually really bright. The camera's not doing it justice. Of course it does taper off a little bit, but that's very normal for all Hot Toys offerings. And then of course I went really dark, and as you can see, I mean, this just looks really cool because you see the nice bright light of the blade, and then of course you have the light kind of reflected off and giving the image of Mace Windu's profile, which just looks really cool. I mean, if you were just to take a still of this, I mean, you could make it into a movie poster. It would just be freaking awesome, and you could see how bright that looks. So I think I like this function. I just wish that they can kind of perfect it a little more. Now, there's really no need to go out and mirror this piece because there's not much going on the reverse side unless you want to see a really detailed, sculpted bald head for whatever reason. If that's your thing, then mirror this piece. And of course, you have the cloaked. I mean, there's nothing new there. It's very high quality. You can see how well the folds are. Again, I'm really lamenting the fact that it doesn't have a wire mesh in it because, you know, even in the Clone Wars, the animated version, Mace Windu was a badass, and I would like to have seen more of that and do some dynamic poses, but can't really get that here. Now, of the hundreds of reviews that we've done, we know by now that the Star Wars bases are pretty standard at this point, just one big slab, which is not, again, necessarily a bad thing. Now, this one is no different. It does read Star Wars, and of course the name of the figure on the lip of the base, Mace Windu, and I don't know how many times I have to say this, but if it isn't broken and, you know, people aren't really complaining about it because they're done pretty well and the figures can stand on them, then you don't gotta change it. This one is pretty good. Now, Mace Windu, at least this iteration of it, is pretty light on accessories, but I mean, more than most, I guess. I don't know, it's a really weird dichotomy there. Now, you do get the other lightsaber wedge, which is pretty cool, and the light up feature works with that as well. You also get the connector because this does connect with a USB, a hologram, an additional lightsaber that doesn't have kind of like the saber out, and then the two gauntlets from the Clone Wars, and of course the communicator, which is really cool. These are really nice accessories. I generally tend not to use them and just keep them in the packaging, though I am interested in putting the gauntlets on this one, and maybe I'll finally use the wedge because I never actually use the wedge lightsabers, but I think because he's so dynamic and I would want to do more of a dynamic pose, I think I might actually use it this time. As I always caution, when you open these things in the package, just be very careful because they tend to go flying around. You guys know what I mean. And of course, as always, rounding out the last bit of accessories are 7 additional hands for various poses. Now, the cloak aside, which, you know, was a little bit disappointing, is actually a very malleable figure, so you can get some really dynamic poses with it. And you'll notice in the thumbnail, he's kind of like leaping out, which is really cool. So again, although I was disappointed in the cloak, this is a very malleable figure, so if you want to get really dynamic, you can absolutely do so, and I encourage it. Now, I have my reasons, and, you know, I always have a second guess and think, oh, maybe I should have gave it a Holy Grail piece, but I can't really give one in this particular case. You know, what can I say?
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker. Say what one more goddamn time.
Well, I'm convinced.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
And in the interest of my personal safety, I'm just going to end the review right now. Alright everybody, so that's my official review on Hot Toys version of Mace Windu from Attack of the Clones, the 1/6 scale figure. As always, I thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next RAUDEZA Reviews.